Hey guys, how's it going? It's Andy from Magoo Investing. Happy Monday. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most commonly discussed stocks that's been around on social media for the past couple months with Palantir Stock, ticker symbol PLTR. This is a stock that I originally had some negative associations with because of it being considered like a meme stock. But this week I'm going to be doing some analysis of some stocks that you guys have requested, and this was a requested video. So if there is a stock you guys would like me to go over in a future video, be sure to leave it in the comment section down below and I'll get to it as soon as I can. So currently Palantir, when I started making this video, it was trading for like $24. And as we've seen with the overall market where things started kind of green this morning, and then the tech stocks have started to sell off significantly compared to some of the industrial stocks with the Dow Jones. And so it was up 2% on the year, and now it is down on the year because Palantir is down around 5 to 6% at the time that I'm recording this video. What's really interesting is that this stock is at its lower half of the 52-week range. So this is a stock that had a lot of momentum going into the end of the year, and then had a massive boost in January, and has fallen since that point. And that's why it is, when I took that picture of the stock price, it was positive at that time because the major move started at the very beginning of January, and it has fallen significantly since that point. So in part one, I'm going to be talking about the news and kind of the earnings report that has been moving the stock around and has pushed it from a high of $45 down to $22. I'm going to be presenting the info as objectively as possible because I think it's important to look at companies from an objective perspective and not try to think of some of the biases that you might have towards a company, because I think that might limit you from buying into stocks that have actually really good potential. So I'm going to try to do that as objectively as possible. Then we're going to be hopping on the charts and talking about what I see on there for technical analysis to see if there's a very good entry point and where the support and resistance is that I'm going to be watching going forward. And then part three, I'm going to give my overall thoughts on Palantir Stock, ticker symbol PLTR, and just kind of tell you where I'm feeling about it going forward. Before getting started, I do want to say that if you've been enjoying these videos, I really appreciate it. Hit the like and subscribe button, as it would help my channel out a lot. We're getting closer to 10,000 subscribers, so thank you all for that. So what is Palantir? They are a tech company that's been around for around 17 years at this point. This is a company that focuses mainly on data analysis, and I'm going to talk about more about what the company does in the future. This is a company that went public towards the end of September, and it was really interesting because it was actually down on its first day of trading. And when I think about some of the well-known IPOs in the past year, I think of stuff like a LMND, an Airbnb, even a Bumble that were up significantly. I wanted to see if it's a common trend for these stocks that go IPO to have this very nice boost on the first day. And from the numbers that I could find, the average IPO, I guess it's not the average, it's the median, was up 20% on its first day. So it's interesting that Palantir did not do well in its first couple days on the market, but it has had a fantastic end of 2020 and had a very good first couple weeks of January. So Palantir is an SaaS company, which stands for Software as a Service Company. They have three main branches of their company, which is Palantir Foundry, Gotham, and Apollo Softwares. This is a very secretive company. Until they went public, it was very difficult to find information on the company. I don't know if I'm just not the target demographic for who's looking for information on their website, but all of the different businesses that they run, all three of them, seem very similar, and I had a very difficult time kind of discerning what the differences between the three of them are. But basically what you need to know is that they're big data. So here's what the all-time chart looks like. The stock had a nice run up towards the start of December, and then it spiked in early 2021. And since then, it's fallen from levels right after the new year to its current levels of around $22. And it's down around 50% since its all-time highs. And this begs the question, is this a stock that is on a fire sale and no one wants it? Or is it something that is at a discount that could be a good buying opportunity? Because I love buying stocks that I determine as being relatively cheap based off of their current values. So we'll talk about that. So why did the stock move up so much? And one of the interesting parts is that this was actually a stock that became very popular on Reddit. And I'm sure that this is a reason why the stock came on the radar for a lot of people. Palantir is not a company that is very well known to most people. So getting the eyes in front of this company definitely pushed it in the direction that it went towards the end of 2020. But this past month has been brutal for a couple reasons, and there's actually two of them. The first one has to do with the end of its share lockup period after its IPO. I always talk about that it's a dangerous time, especially if an IPO has done very well in the first couple months after it's gone public, because when you have a company go IPO, you have a restricted period. You have these insiders that were given shares as being a part of the company that aren't allowed to sell it for a certain amount of time. It's usually like 180 days. And so after that share lockup period expires, especially if the stock has gone up significantly in value during that time, a lot of the insiders will sell off their profits because they've now been made multimillionaires just overnight. And so they want to lock in some profits and maybe don't want to have full exposure to this company that they still believe in, but don't want all of their stock options to still be in a company that has gone up significantly in the past couple months. So the share lockup period ended and a lot of shares were sold. That was part of it. And then you had an earnings report that it's always interesting when you look at earnings reports because you can always find something good about a company, but then analysts will find something that they don't like and that'll push the stock down. And so basically what happened there is that they had a very nice revenue beat, and that's always a good thing. You think, oh, revenue, stock probably went up after it. They actually had a surprise loss, and that pushed the stock down significantly. Their net loss was for $580 million, but when you remove the stock compensation from going public, that loss is only $338 million. I say only, that's still a lot of money. In addition, this is a company that has never had a profit in its 17-year history. And I usually think of that as being a really bad thing, but we've seen in the past, I think about companies like Plug Power, ticker symbol PLUG, that have done very well in the past year after not posting a profit in the 20 plus years that they've been a publicly traded company. So profitability is great, but for tech companies, it's not as big of a problem to not be profitable. From that report, the company expects to hit $4 billion in revenue by 2025 and have revenue growth in the upcoming year of around 30%. And looking at their annual revenue for the past couple years, they'll have to see some very nice revenue growth in the upcoming years to try to reach that target, because to reach $4 billion from their current levels of only $1 billion, 4x in revenue in 4 to 5 years is really tough to do. So let's talk about their customers, because I think this is the really interesting part. In their 17 years of being a business, they only have 125 customers total. And it's actually way less than that, because the way they report things is each different government agency that they work with, they count as a different customer. So the US government is their largest customer overall. At this point, 53.5% of their total revenue comes from government contract. While they only have 125 customers, if you put the US government contracts into one, that number would be way smaller. Based off their reliance on government contracts, it's not surprising to see that their average revenue per customer was almost $8 million total. And then if you look at their top 20 customers, they bring in $33 million each in 2020. So this is a company that does not have very many customers, but the ones that they have, they bring in a lot of money for the company. So that's just something to notice going forward. This is a company that spends a lot on sales and marketing. It's really interesting that in 2020, the company spent 61% of their total revenue on marketing and sales overall. The reason that they did this from their website is that in many cases we launch at our expense pilot developments with customers without a long-term contract in place. So they're spending money to try to bring people on board, and that's at the expense of the company. And that's why their sales numbers and their costs associated with those sales are so high. So we've talked about some bad news recently. Let's talk about some of the stuff that has pushed it up a little bit in the short term. After Palantir fell after the earnings report, Cathie Wood from the ARK ETFs came out and said that she was buying additional shares for her ARK ETFs. Having a very vocal bull on your side is always a good thing, especially when it brings publicity to why a well-known bull is bullish on your company overall. And so some of the other stocks that Cathie Wood has been buying recently is she bought the dip on Tesla. And so putting those two together, having someone as well-known as Cathie Wood be on your side is definitely a good thing for the long term. And then the other big thing that came out recently is that Goldman Sachs raised their price target to $34, which is still, it's almost like 50% from the current levels. So there is a lot of upside if you believe what Goldman Sachs has to say. But let's hop on over the charts and talk about what I see there overall, because there could be a case made that if this is a stock that I absolutely love, that this could be a good buying opportunity. So let's head on to the computer and talk about what I see there. All right, so here we are looking at Palantir, ticker symbol PLTR on the charts. And the first thing that really stuck out to me is that, wow, this is a very volatile stock. The fact that it's down more than 5% on the day, it's just a little blip over here. Like it's not that big of a move. And so I'm looking and there's some big, these are like 25% moves. So the first thing that sticks out to me is volatility is very high. And so this is something that you need to understand before ever buying into a stock, is understanding how the price moves over time. Because yes, over the long term, you can see, oh, it's up this much over the past year, but the volatility is where the emotional responses come from. And so understanding that buying into a stock like Palantir has a lot of emotional responsibility, because this is a stock that's going to swing violently in both directions. So these are the three zones that I've decided to draw from looking at the charts. Since this is not a stock that's been around for a long time, normally I do the one-day chart, but you don't see the full movement of the stock because it has not been public for very long. It went public back on September 30th of this past year. So I went to the 180-day 4-hour chart because I think this gives a better indication of how the stock has been moving over time. So the bottom area, as of right now, it's at a pretty interesting zone. This has been a support in the past. It's touched it back in December, and this is the very beginning of January. And so for the past couple of weeks, it seems like it's been trying to get below this level, but it has not been able to. We had this big sell-off on, I think this is Friday, and it went down below the zone, but closed still in the area. So this support has still stayed intact at this point. And so when I'm looking at this stock, I'm looking for what's going to happen if it falls through the support. And that's the main problem that I see with this very long-term investment, because if this holds, there is a lot of room to the upside. You can still go up almost 70% to get to this resistance that I drew at the $39 mark. But the problem is when I look to the downside, I don't really see an area where it would make sense that it could stop. You have this area down here, maybe at like $15, but from $22 down to $15. That's like 30% drop. So that's always an important thing to pay attention to, is where is the next level that it could drop to? Because while it looks like a decent opportunity right now, it can continue to fall. And so when I look to the upside, there is a lot of potential. Going from the current price up to this next resistance would be 35%, and then going up to the final resistance that I have charted is 71%. So this is the stock, as you would expect, it has very volatile moves, and it does have a lot of move to the upside, but there's not a solid support. So as of right now, the buying opportunity looks decent based off of it sitting at a support, but since the risk of not having a solid support below it and the indicators, like the death cross right here where the 50-day is crossed over top of the 200-day moving average, not looking that great. So as of right now, I'm going to put it as a neutral from what I'm seeing on the charts. So now that we've talked about the recent news stories and the catalysts that have been moving the stock up and down over the past couple months, let's talk about how I feel about Palantir overall. This is one of the more complicated stocks that I've looked at in the past couple months. And so I want to give 3 reasons why and 3 reasons why I don't like Palantir for a long-term investment. So let's talk about the 3 reasons why I like Palantir, ticker symbol PLTR, for a long-term investment. The first one is that they have great looking guidance at this point. They reached $1 billion in revenue in 2020, and they expect that number to get to $4 billion by 2025. That is a lot of revenue growth. 4xing your revenue in just 5 years would be very impressive, and since they believe that's possible, that's a lot of growth for the company going forward. Number 2 is that it's not as overextended as it once was. This was a company that hit highs of $45 just a couple months ago, and now it's down sitting around $20. So if this was a company that I really believed in, I would consider this to be an extreme discount. And then number 3, this is a company that Cathie Wood has been very bullish about overall. And having a vocal bull like Cathie Wood from the ARK ETFs being on your side has a significant pull when it comes to the overall market, considering that she's been buying the dips on other companies like Tesla, which she's been very vocal about in the past. But Palantir has a stock that I think has a lot of red flags. And so I wanted to talk about 3 reasons why I don't love Palantir for a long-term investment. The first is that they don't have a lot of customers. They only have 125 customers in the 17 years that they've been a company. And that number is actually way less if you consider that each of the government agencies are considered as a different customer. So what that means is that their top customers, on average, the top 20 of them brought in $33 million per account. That's great for right now, but if you have a problem and you lose an account, that's a significant hit to the company. And when I think about some of the changes that's going to be going forward with big tech, that kind of worries me a little bit. Number 2, they rely heavily on government contracts. In 2020, 53.5% of their revenue overall came from government contracts. Until they've proven that they can do well in the private sector, that kind of worries me about hitting their growth targets that they've set for 2025. And then number 3, it's a huge red flag with their spending on marketing. They spent 61% of their revenue overall on marketing. That included $600,000 in travel stipends for their CEO and $1 million in plane chartering costs. Considering that they'd never had a profit in the 17 years that they've been a company, and the fact that they had a wider than expected loss in the past quarter, that does worry me for a long-term investment. So overall, Palantir Stock, ticker symbol PLTR, is one of the more interesting stocks that we've seen in a long time. Their guidance looks very good for the future, and if you believe the things that they're saying, I think this could be a good opportunity, especially considering that's at a significant discount. But talking about some of the red flags that I've been seeing, it does worry me a little bit, especially the momentum-driven increase in price that we've seen after it IPO'd back in September. So as of right now, I'm going to give it like a 6 out of 10. It's not a stock that I really dislike, but because of what we've been seeing in the overall market, I don't think this has a spot in my portfolio at this point, especially considering that the tech stocks have been selling off significantly. I don't think this is going to be the bottom. And since on the charts that I mentioned that there's not a solid support below this, it's going to be really interesting to see if the stock market continues to fall and pulls Palantir down with it to see where it ends up. So let me know what you guys feel about Palantir overall. Do you think it's a good stock to buy right now, or are you going to wait further to see what happens? Also, if there's other stocks you guys would like me to discuss in future videos, be sure to leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching this video. I appreciate all the support, and I will see you in the next video.